So one of the symbols could be legs. The other one is mammoths. Mammoths is a symbol that hangs over the whole game. And Hans Vorarlberg, is like a ghost that hangs over it all. Because when you reach the university, it is here fronted with these giant mammoth statues. And yet, until now, you thought Hans Vorarlberg was just someone who had come here and sort of ran away. But everywhere you go, it seems as if his entire presence has completely affected and rebuilt the places where he went. These robots in the middle were his invention. The communist statues were his invention. It's almost as if every single section in the game was entirely his world, completely made by him. Now, Benoit Sokal, the creator of the game, actually says in an interview that to him, the three stages of the game are very much metaphors for different aspects of Europe or different aspects of European history, and used to talk about ideology and idealism, utopias, in a sense. That Valladolid, the small village, is this sort of pastoral dream of an ideal little village in the mountains. Then the university is this other dream of great edifices of knowledge. And then Konkosgrad, the sort of communist factory, is like this dream of great technical creation. So, and to him, to Benoit Sokal, they are very much sort of metaphorical locations. So I found it very interesting when he said that, because indeed the whole game has this feel that you're not actually walking down real places, but you're walking down metaphors, that all of these locations that Kate is visiting are symbols, and that the game is sort of openly admitting that. So it's very interesting when you reach this university with these massive mammoths, and this is precisely what Hans was obsessed with. He was obsessed with these mammoths, and with the ideal as well. Again, this sort of ideal land that they come from. There's this legend that they come from Syberia with a Y, which is this sort of mythical place where humans and mammoths lived together, and there was this sort of perfect archaic society that used to exist there, that is almost described as if they were in some way magical. So if we're going to look at this game symbolically and analyze it as if it were a dream in a sense, then a society that places this great symbolic importance on mammoths and on the let's say, and a game that places this much importance on the archaic, right? Because it's not just elephants, it's mammoths. It's something that doesn't exist anymore, that is dead, that is gone, and gets magnified as a dream in nostalgia, even nostalgia for something that you didn't live, like the archaic past. So it's almost as if Hans is trying to reclaim his childhood by regressing. Sort of, that's the thing, when he hit his head trying to grab the mammoth, he hits his head and regresses to childhood. And even though he becomes an adult man, he is still a child at mind. It's as if that experience in the cave is the core trauma, the sort of trauma in a very general sense. Like, I think it's talking about the past, right? It's his childhood, because his childhood is the past, but it's also the past of humanity, because that's the past. And all of these pasts get sort of conglomerated into one big package, whose symbolism is the mammoth. And it's magical, it's a magical symbol, and it's charged. So, in a very basic way, you could say it's pure libido, right? The mammoth is this big phallic symbol. The university and the all the people you meet there are also these great sort of male authority figures. So again, the phallus as a sort of here is used as a symbol of power. Libido is used for power, which I don't think is how Hans views it. So I think the game is also allowing for this sort of multiple use of symbols for one use over the other. But essentially, there is this thing about the phallus and libido. And of course, libido being trapped in the past in the form of nostalgia, which creates idealism and then creates sort of different visions and incarnations of societies, represented by the different locations you visit in the game. So, if I were to connect the two symbols together, I think that you could. You have on the one hand the leg, and on the other the trunk. And the leg is very classically, and in comparative mythology, like in stories such as the Fisher King and so on, a wounded leg is a wounded phallus. The leg is is a sort of like a dream analogy of the phallus. So the trunk and the leg are both referring to sort of built up libido. In fact, talking about build up libido, Kate Walker starts to mention towards the middle of the game that there is something a bit comical about her situation, because essentially what she's doing is she is traveling by train on a straight track with one clear objective, but there are a million obstacles in her way. Every place she reaches, there's this giant wall that needs to be unlocked, this big barrier, and once she unlocks it, the train can pass through. Of course, the train, in a sense, is another phallic symbol, but the barriers are all barriers of ego or barriers of repression, and every time you pass one of them, you pass into like a manifestation of the psychic sort of the psyche, a manifestation of the psyche that was repressed. So at the beginning you have Valadilene, right? It's all completely idyllic. Once you pass a certain barrier, something that was repressed comes up to the surface, which is this excessive obsession with knowledge, represented by the university. But then once again you lift another barrier and suddenly it transmutes into this sort of slightly more power obsessed manifestation. So the university is a desire for power in the sense of a desire for mental power, but suddenly it becomes into a desire for real physical power. As if every time you've unlocked a certain gate, and the game, in a sense, and this is what Kate comments on, the game is slightly repetitive in that you're advancing towards a place, there is a barrier, you need to unlock it, then you can move a bit more, unlock it, then you can move a bit more. And this again, in the way that it's presented, and again I refer to the fact that the creator of the game also mentions that the different locations are different representations of European ideals, because it suggests that what you are moving through is indeed barriers of repression, and that therefore what is blocked up is libido. that what Kate Walker is trying to do is to allow libido to flow freely. And I mean libido not in the sexual sense, but in the general psychological energy kind of sense. So, what is one way that Kate Walker unblocks libido? Well, she needs to help this boat move through so that the boat can carry the train forward, sort of help the train get towards its objective. And to do that, it needs to sort of increase or decrease the water level to allow the boat to move to the other side, so that she can move to the other side of the river. There's this sort of general thing going on. And this is precisely what she had done before in her encounter with Momo. In order to access the cave of memory, the cave where the mammoth was found, she needs to cross to the other side of the river. And to do that, she needs to change the water level. In order to do that, Momo needs some sort of lever to open the door. And what is used is the oar from the boat. So as a symbol, the boat becomes the object that allows Kate to cross the river. She's crossing the river thanks to the boat, but not on the boat. The boat is purely symbolic. The oar is used to change the water level, and this allows Anna to access the cave. Now, once again, this is exactly what's happening here. That the boat literally is what helps Anna access the other side. I keep saying Anna, but I mean Kate. Anyway, finally, again, we see boats which are not used as boats. They're not in the water, they're just symbolic. The graveyard of boats. At the very end of the game, with the opera singer, there's a thing where like ships acquire different meaning depending on how they're used. And in fact, just before this, what allows you to fly towards the ship graveyard is the astronaut. You see, towards the end of the game, you encounter this astronaut who was never able to fly in a spaceship. And he had all this potential and all these dreams, and he's abandoned them, and he's just completely depressed. And you help him to get on a spaceship. So again, the ship is a spaceship. It's an actual ship or a boat. It's a train. All these vessels for traveling, like the legs, are almost interchangeable because they have a charge, they have a character to them that's like a fairy tale. It's not a real train, it's a fantasy train. It's not a real spaceship. They're all just vessels for traveling. So pure symbols of libido being unlocked. Libido being locked is him not being able to fly. Suddenly he's able to fly. You're not able to fly. Finally you're able to fly. This sort of thing. And as you move on through the game, as I was saying before, this game does this very strange thing where it's as if every new level that you unblock, darker and darker realities from the unconscious start to flow up. You start in this idyllic little town, but slowly all the darkness of war and conflict and poverty starts to flow back in as you allow it to come in. And that seems to be Kate's heroic journey. And throughout this journey, it becomes very clear in the dialogue and the sort of things that are said that most of the male characters you meet are symbolic substitutes for Hans Vorarlberg. You are told that Hans Vorarlberg has this great talent and that he just became depressed and didn't know what to do about it. Again, the astronaut seems to be just a perfect representation of this. Before this, you meet probably the darkest character in the game, who is this man who's obsessed with an opera singer. Obsessed to the point of pure projection. He thinks that she's in love with him even though he's never met her. It's almost similar to how Kate and other characters are obsessed with characters they've never met. There's this weird game of projections and hopes placed on people that one doesn't know. And all of this seems to be as well the dark side of Hans Vorarlberg, placing hope in sort of ideal visions that have more to do with fear. And Kate herself is confronting all this around her. And it's very interesting because, as I said before, she sort of loses touch with her American friends because as she moves on, it becomes more and more clear to her that her fiancé, which she thought she loved, is cheating on her. She realizes that her job is actually sort of trying to sign things in ways that are immoral, that a lot of her friends are more interested in money and fame and all this stuff. It's almost like at the beginning of the game she doesn't see this, but as she moves along she does. But the reason she sees this is because of her encounters with the characters in the game. So her encounters in the game confront all these topics of abandoning your dreams in favor of money, of being obsessed with people even though they don't love you, stuff like that. Through confronting these issues in her journey, she confronts them with these people on the other side of the phone, even though she's not actually met with them in a few days. Her relationship to them has changed because her relationship to the world and to herself has changed through the heroic journey. And the game really expresses that really well.